Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, what up, Bolt fam? It's the director. Chargers fans, well, we are 2 weeks into the NFL season. The Chargers currently 1-1. But you know what? I feel even despite that loss to Kansas City, this team is looking lean and mean. This defense is looking as elite as ever. This offense still does carry a lot of potential to help hopefully reach that top 5 status it did in 2021. But I still do feel there are things that the Chargers can do to improve. You want to boost your odds wherever you can, especially in a year that you're going all in, and also especially in a year that the Kansas City Chiefs, still kind of running the division right now. I would like to see if there are any things that the Chargers could do right now, week 2, after gathering even more data, kind of seeing what this team looks like out on the field. What are some moves the Chargers can do to further improve and help in this all-in season? So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do one of my favorite things. We're going to tinker a little bit, man. We're going to list some big moves that the Chargers could still make right now, but we're going to do it in a fun way. We're going to play a game. We're going to list a bunch of moves that the Chargers could make to improve their roster and label them hot or cold. And this is something you guys can do in the comment section as we go along. So no question today. Just follow along in the video and let me know if these hot or cold takes match what your opinions are. Maybe add some if you feel there are more moves the Chargers can make that are not listed in this video. So hot means I would do it. It could happen. Cold means that maybe I'm not about it, and there's a less likely chance that it does actually happen. So before we do get started, guys, I do have an announcement to make. Like I alluded to last week, we've got a brand new sponsor, an Underdog Fantasy. You know what, dudes? I'm very picky with my sponsors. Of course, I want to partner with people that offer things that I actually use. You guys remember Manscaped? Because, of course, this is something I do anyway. Weekly fantasy, this is the way to do it, man. We've also secured an awesome deal for you guys. You can use code DIRECTOR for Underdog to match your first deposit up to $100. And, of course, with stuff like Underdog, sharing is caring, so I'll be showing you guys some of my picks throughout the year as well. So huge shout out to Underdog Fantasy, the brand new sponsor of the show. Also, another reminder for you guys, we do have a giveaway going on right now, man. As a thanks from me to you guys, my subs, and my crew members, we are giving away this signed Antonio Gates jersey to one of my lucky subs. All you guys got to do to enter for this is hit up the link in the description, follow the instructions there, very simple, and make sure you are subscribed. Only subs can win. Then, of course, we always do giveaways in twos around here. We're also giving away this signed LaDainian Tomlinson jersey to one of my crew members as a thank you from me to you guys. All you got to do to be entered for this is be a member of my crew, and that is it. With that, let's finally kick this video off, guys. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, the small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. Big moves that the Chargers can still make here after week 2. Of course, we're going to be playing our game of hot and cold. It's going to be very easy to follow along, guys. So let's jump into our first take here. Hot or cold? You guys tell me. Here's the first take. The Chargers, with Justin Herbert now battling injury with it sound like injured ribs, right? The rib cartilage. The Chargers go out and sign a higher quality backup quarterback. And in this instance, I've got listed Cam Newton. Now, everybody hold your horses, okay? There's going to be some strong opinions about this situation. For one, okay, the pros of signing a guy like Cam Newton. The Chargers do currently have Chase Daniel as their backup quarterback on the roster. And you know what? Given his preseason performance, the kind of leadership he brings to the locker room and to Justin Herbert individually, he's a solid QB2 to keep on the roster, especially for what he offers from the sideline. However, our second backup, or I should say QB3 in Easton Stick, I do feel like he's got a pretty decent ceiling in terms of his playmaking ability. Easton Stick, certainly the kind of guy that can scramble, give you some extra time to find an open receiver, just kind of make those big plays out of nothing. And the Chargers currently do roster 3 quarterbacks. The question is, if Justin Herbert really is having an issue that's going to keep him off the field, would it be wise for the Chargers to go out and sign a quarterback to help boost their odds while they do have this, let's say, super powered and supercharged, defense and offense and roster overall? A guy like Cam Newton, you could argue, still keeps the Chargers in contention, especially for right now. The Chargers, in their current schedule, we'll say it's maybe listed as a little bit soft. Of course, playing the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 3, followed by the Houston Texans, and a slew of other games that most would maybe consider a bit softer opponents. If the Chargers can get a quarterback into the locker room that does have the upside of, let's say, even a Cam Newton, even if he is a bit past his prime, maybe that's just going to be just enough for the Chargers to squeak by these, what we would call maybe softer games or even trap games, depending on your perspective, and keep the Chargers win column pretty healthy before going into a stiffer competition in the second half of the schedule. Of course, by that time, we're hoping we got Justin Herbert back full at 100%. We got nothing too much to worry about. So here comes the game part, guys. The Chargers and Cam Newton. This is a topic that we have talked about before in the past. Of course, Cam Newton in his recent career has not been that good. You could also insert name quarterback here for all I care. We're going to use Cam Newton in this take. Do you guys think the Chargers should be signing another quarterback to help them through these slew of games while we're waiting to see what's going on with Justin Herbert? For me, the Chargers signing Cam Newton, I guess I wouldn't hate the move, but I'm going to label this one cold. As of right now, from what I'm hearing with Justin Herbert, with pretty much any rib injury that you're going to see, these tend to be the kind of injuries that you can play through. I read an awesome article on Bolt Beat this morning talking about why Chargers fans should maybe be a little bit more optimistic about this situation. Tony Romo, a couple years back, did suffer pretty much the exact same injury, of which he was able to play through the entire season. Some people were a little bit worried, like, okay, well, he's playing through injury. Did his production dip in any way? Not really. Tony Romo, you could say, in that season, had one of his best statistical years in his NFL career, which kind of tells you the situation we're at with Justin Herbert. Of course, Herbert having 10 days to recover. Hopefully he's feeling a lot better, even outside the realm of football. Just, you don't want the man to be uncomfortable, but at the same time, this could be the kind of injury that Justin Herbert could play through. We might see a bit of a thicker, flak vest going into Week 3, but there is a chance that the Chargers do suit him up in Week 3 and just play him a little bit more cautiously through the season. But you guys let me know what you guys think of the first, hot or cold take. I'm going to label this one as cold. I think the Chargers, with rostering 3 quarterbacks, the kind of injury that Justin Herbert has, it's not really necessary to go out there and get a backup quarterback, especially one that might be as expensive as a Cam Newton. Keep in mind, as we do continue on in here, guys, some people will say, well, Director, we do not have the money to sign a guy like Cam Newton. The Chargers do currently have $8 million in cap space. If we do want to go out and sign an additional person, I would suspect the Chargers want to keep that as rollover cap into next year, but that's a conversation for another day. The Chargers do have $8 million to work with if they so do choose. Next up, let's talk about that offensive line a little bit. The Chargers did lose Trey Pipkins to injury last week. Of course, that status is also up in the air. We don't really know the recovery time for him or Corey Linsley, our center. So the next take here is that the Chargers are going to sign a right tackle. And in this example, I'm going to use Darrell Williams. Now, Darrell Williams, in my opinion, is still the best right tackle available in free agency. And of course, that's because he played pretty dang good for Buffalo and his previous teams when on the field. This man is viewed as a hybrid guard / right tackle. Maybe not the best scheme fit for the Chargers, but certainly one that would bring a bit of an upgrade to that right tackle spot. Do I think Matt Filer is better than Trey Pipkins for the Bolts, who is their current starter? Maybe slightly. I do think I like the ceiling of Darrell Williams a bit better than I do a Trey Pipkins. It doesn't mean that Trey Pipkins should be, demoted in any way. If he comes back healthy from that injury very soon, then maybe we don't need a right tackle like Darrell Williams. But at the same time, if you have a swing tackle at the quality of Trey Pipkins, it only spells, better depth and better odds to make it throughout the year with a pretty good and competent, healthy offensive line, right? So maybe even despite the status of a guy like Trey Pipkins, maybe the Chargers do want to cover their bases a little bit in signing a guy like Darrell Williams who can also, play right now while Trey Pipkins is down, but maybe also moving a guy like Storm Norton off of the roster and let's say giving the swing tackle position to a guy like Trey Pipkins, who has been pretty good this season. That would give you some pretty nice depth at right and left tackle, with Trey Pipkins being your swing tackle, as well as a pretty competent starter in a guy like Darrell Williams. I'm going to go ahead and label this take as hot. I do think the Chargers need to make a signing on that offensive line, because if we're just here now into Week 2, right? The status of a center and Corey Linsley and a right tackle and Trey Pipkins already being up in the air this early in the schedule, does tell me that the Chargers could very much so benefit from additional depth and maybe even better starters on that offensive line. Of course, the offensive line right now looks pretty dang good. Left to right, you got Slater, Filer, Lindsley hopefully coming back from injury soon, Zion Johnson, who's been looking absolutely amazing, and then at right tackle, Trey Pipkins. But if you can add a guy like Darrell Williams to that list, again, it bolsters your depth as well as gives you a pretty nice starter to slide in while we're waiting for Trey Pipkins to come back. And who knows, maybe that adds a little bit more competition at right tackle after Trey Pipkins does return. And more competition, especially with quality players like Williams and Pipkins, is never a bad thing. So I'm going to label this one as hot. I do think it's pretty likely that the Chargers pursue some additional help on the offensive line, as well as this is definitely a move that I would use if I were the Los Angeles Chargers at this point in week 2. Next up, let's talk about another potential slide in at right tackle, and of course, that is Matt Filer. Okay, everybody, I understand. We've talked your brains out when it comes to moving Matt Filer to right tackle, okay? And that's because Matt Filer's always been a solid option for the Chargers if they did need somebody more reliable at the position. Matt Filer graded out pretty dang decent when starting at right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers a couple years back. Now, the biggest issue right now is that the Chargers, they don't want to disturb that chemistry they've got on the line. Slater, Filer, and Lindsley has been working out very, very well these past couple of seasons, and it's one that I don't know if the Chargers do want to disturb. On the other hand, though, moving Matt Filer to right tackle offers you an in-house solution while waiting for Trey Pipkins to return. So maybe this could be more of a band-aid on a bullet wound situation where we see Matt Filer starting at right tackle just until Trey Pipkins can get back on his feet. Is this something that I see the Chargers doing? I don't know, man. I'm going to label this take as cold, because the Chargers had plenty of opportunities to move Matt Filer to right tackle last season, of which they did not. And I'm talking after some horrendous games by Storm Norton playing at the position at the time. Is this something I want to see happen? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm not quite sure. Now, as an added note to this segment here, I also put in here, note, this is what I want. I want the Chargers to move Matt Filer to right tackle. And again, it does not have to be a permanent solution, because as of right now, the Chargers do have a very capable backup at guard playing Matt Filer's previous spot in this scenario in Jamari Sawyer. Jamari Sawyer, in my opinion, I've got some pretty big faith in that dude. He's one of the biggest steals in the NFL draft this season. He looked very good in the preseason and in camp. Why not use the pieces on your roster to help massage the situation at right tackle? Promote Jamari Sawyer to your starting left guard and move Matt Filer to right tackle while we wait for Trey Pipkins to return. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. Do I think it's going to happen? Unfortunately, just my gut feeling says that the Chargers aren't going to budge, but at the same time, maybe they'll consider it knowing that it's not a permanent solution. You guys let me know in the comment section below what you think of that take. I love that take, and I'm hoping that's something the Chargers are considering right now. Next up, let's talk about a big player, or I should say a big name on offense that the Chargers could consider bringing in Will Fuller. Hot take. The Chargers sign Will Fuller to help bolster this offense. Now, the Chargers, taking a look at this offense right now, which again graded out top 5 in the NFL in 2021. They're off to a bit of a slow start. The Chargers' run game has not been spectacular. Of course, we're trying to get Sony Michel and these other guys up to speed. Maybe Joe Lombardi himself needs a couple of reps before understanding how to really make the most of these running backs. That being said, the Chargers don't boast a whole lot of speed, and I think there's a lot to be learned from the surrounding teams in the NFL at this point here in week 2. Tua Tagovailoa. Of course, there's going to be a lot of hate in the comment section for this one, but I'm okay, man. We'll take it. I've been a huge believer of Tua Tagovailoa since, the year that he was drafted. Of course, the same year as Justin Herbert. Does that mean I want Tua over Herbert? Absolutely not. We got the better quarterback and probably generational talent, whereas Tua, I think, is going to be very good, if not above serviceable. That being said, Tua does have weapons that feature, attributes that the Chargers do not, and that's some big, big speed. And we saw that on display in week 2, where the Miami Dolphins took on the Baltimore Ravens. And of course, I do credit that as a big reason why Tua and the Dolphins were able to fight back from a huge deficit in order to win that game. Jalen Waddle and, of course, Tyreek Hill, 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL, give Tua some options in terms of moving the ball and having that big score and playability. The Chargers at this point don't really have that outside of Jalen Guyton. I do feel if the Chargers want to get serious about this offense, they're going to have to start getting serious about adding some speed. And as of right now, Will Fuller still floating around out there as a free agent, whether or not it be because of his injury status or just because of his price tag. He is available if the Chargers do so choose to go pursue him. Now, I do not think Will Fuller's price tag is going to be quite as high as it was at the beginning of the season. We're 2 weeks in and nobody has signed Will Fuller. I think the Chargers could definitely get him at a very reasonable cost, at a very nice, budget cost towards their cap. But at the same time, it really does depend on how the Chargers view their offensive weapons right now. Keenan Allen out for that game versus Kansas City. I do think that was a very big deal and a big part of why the Chargers lost that game. We do have, Josh Palmer, who's been looking very, very solid, even if he hasn't been getting the best targets in the world. He's been making himself available. Mike Williams, who did finally see the proper utilization in week 2 as our ex-receiver. He kind of popped off for over 100 and a touchdown. And then behind him, you got guys like Jalen Guyton, of course, and maybe a Michael Bandy or another guy that could elevate from the roster if they needed to. Or of course DeAndre Carter as well. We cannot forget him. The Chargers' speed options right now are their wide receivers, let's say 4 and 5. And that means they're not going to be as involved in the offense. If the Chargers can add a guy like Will Fuller that they can get involved pretty heavily and utilize that speed to its full potential, it could unlock some big playability for this Chargers offense that does feature a quarterback with one of the biggest arms in the NFL. Those are the reasons I think the Chargers should pursue Will Fuller, and it's a reason why I think the Chargers should get serious about maybe noting what they're seeing in the rest of the NFL, especially with the Dolphins. Speed is really one of those edges that goes overlooked, in my opinion. And I think adding some to the roster is not a bad idea. That being said, what is my take on this? It's going to be cold. I think the Chargers have some great weapons on the offense right now. Whether or not it's kind of adding up to, a top 5, a potential top 5 offense like it was last year, still, that's waiting to be seen. But at the same time, I don't know if the Chargers, with Will Fuller and his status and, his injury concern probably being the biggest red flag for me of all, are willing to take that leap at least right now. It could happen a little bit later in the season, but as of right now, I'm going to say I'm cold on the Will Fuller ad, even though it's something that I would personally consider. Next up, a lot of Chargers fans talking about Joe Lombardi this last week. Of course, Joe Lombardi, there are things that he can improve in his play calling. Do I, use him as a scapegoat in terms of the Chargers' collapse in offense last week? No, not really. I don't think it's all on Joe Lombardi. Do I think he needs to improve? Absolutely. But I don't think it was his fault the Chargers lose that game. That being said, the take on this segment here is going to be called Fire Joe Lombardi, Promote Shane Day. What do you guys think about this? This is something that the Chargers have done in the past in letting go of an offensive coordinator that's not working and promoting a quarterback's coach that understands the elite level of talent they have at the QB position. In years past, it's been with Phillip Rivers, most recently now with Justin Herbert. This is something that I actually think could possibly happen. If Joe Lombardi continues with the, let's say, conservative play calling with some of the elite talent that he has on this roster, it could lead to maybe a change at OC here in the next couple of weeks. Do I think it's going to happen? I think the chances are actually a little bit higher than even I believe. I think that the Chargers at this point, with a Justin Herbert, with an Austin Eckler, with a Keenan Allen, with the Mike Williams, with the Gerald Everett, are wanting to move the ball a little bit more efficiently. And if I'm the Chargers, this is a conversation I'm having after every game this year. Guys, what's going on? We've got the players. We got big money players on this offense. Why aren't we moving the ball more efficiently? I think a lot of that's going to come back down to your play calling. So yes, right now I do think Joe Lombardi may be on the hot seat a little bit. I'm one of those guys that believes that he'll figure it out. He understands this roster very well. I think he just needs to get a little bit more bold in how he utilizes his talent. And I do think that he has the potential to maybe even prove that here in week 3. But as for the take, I'm going to say hot. I think there's a big possibility that Joe Lombardi maybe gets replaced by a guy like Shane Day, who obviously understands his quarterback and could help transform this offense into a more vertical offense rather than this dink and dunk that we've been seeing the past couple of weeks. So you guys let me know what you think of that one. Next up, the Chargers still have a bit of issue on the offensive line, right? Let's talk a little bit about the center position. The Chargers did lose Corey Linsley to injury last week. Again, the status of that is up in the air, but I do think that the Chargers could very well consider bringing in a backup center not named Will Clapp. Will Clapp has been okay, right? I don't think he's been spectacular, but I don't think he's been anything, great either way. I think the signing would be more in terms of the backup to your backup at this point. And this does rely a lot on Corey Linsley's status. If Linsley's going to miss an extended amount of time, the Chargers would be wise to bring in another guy behind Will Clapp just in case. And of course, we do have guys on the offensive line that can play, multiple positions, guard or center. But at the same time, I don't want to rely on that in terms of our depth. I would like to bring in a guy that can compete for snaps with Will Clapp while also providing some depth. Now we're going to put on the screen here Matt Paradis, who's been the center for the Carolina Panthers, of course, and I do believe the Denver Broncos before that. He's okay, right? I think you can definitely label him as a serviceable center and one that you can chuck into the lineup with Will Clapp, get some, let's say quality reps in terms of competition at the center position, and just kind of wait and see what happens. I would feel a little bit better. I would say actually a lot better with Matt Paradis at center than I would Will Clapp. But at the same time, it's about addressing that depth. Again, all of this kind of hinges on the status of Corey Linsley and when he returns. What do I think of this take of the Chargers signing center Matt Paradis? I'm going to say I'm a bit cold on it. I feel like the Chargers brought in Will Clapp for a reason. They do got guys in there that can play the center position if they need to. And when it comes to addressing the offensive line at this point of the season with the limited amount of cap space that they do have, I think their sights are going to be firmly on the right tackle position rather than the center position where they do have options. Still, it's one that I think the Chargers should consider because depth on the offensive line can make or break a season, especially the further down the road you get. If we see those injuries starting to pile up and we don't have quality backups, which at this point, outside of a couple of guys I don't think we have, it could bite you in the butt. So at this point, I'm going to say cold is my official stance on it, but it's something that I would consider if I were the Bolts. Next up, a name that was pretty hot here at the tail end of the free agency period for the Chargers and its fans, and it's going to be the Chargers signing Ndamukong Suh. Now, of course, one of the biggest things the Chargers tried to address this offseason was improving this atrocious run defense. And to respond to that, they went out and signed Sebastian Joseph, Dawson Johnson, and in some ways you can say Khalil Mack and Morgan Fox. So far, I feel like so good. Maybe on the surface. I do think the Chargers could definitely get better in terms of their run defense. They could find players that maybe fit this system and this scheme in a guy like Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh being signed wouldn't be any, small move by the Chargers, by the way. If Suh were to join the Bolts defensive line, lining up next to Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, this would probably turn into one of the better run defenses in the league rather than maybe one of the average. And of course, the Chargers, in terms of this defense, they are looking pretty complete in my mind. The linebackers actually don't look that bad. They've been elevating. The edge players, definitely some of the best, if not the best in the league. Those DBs have been some of the best in the league. That defensive line, though, again, everything kind of starts from the bottom and works its way up. If we can make that defensive line just absolutely stellar versus the run, it could make this defense that much more lethal. And of course, Ndamukong Suh offers a lot in terms of the pass rusher as well. It just kind of fits for me. And of course, this is a move that a lot of Chargers fans have been considering since the top of the offseason, or I should say the bottom of the offseason. What is my official stance on this take? I'm going to say I'm a bit cold on it. I think at this point, the Chargers, yes, they're not the best versus the run, but they're definitely not the worst like they were last season. And as exciting as it would be to see Ndamukong Suh in powder blue, I just don't know if the Chargers really need him as much as they need help at other positions at this point, because when it comes to depth at a certain position on this defense, you could argue that the defensive line is one of the best. It doesn't mean that the Chargers have some elite starters and elite backups. It just means that I feel good about next man up, right? If Morgan Fox goes down, I mean, technically we still got Tillery. It's not like the best thing in the world, but it could be a lot worse, right? Maybe it could not be worse. Who knows? We still do have Braden Fayoko on the practice squad. We got Christian Covington. We got the rookie Tito Agbonia. We got some, pretty decent names behind the starters right now. That's why I feel like Ndamukong Suh to me is a cold take. At this point, I just don't know if the Chargers need it, and I do think that they have some room to grow as the season goes on in terms of their efficiency versus the run. And last but not least, probably the biggest name on this list that would get Chargers fans excited, we're going to talk about the Chargers signing Odell Beckham Jr. Now, of course, this is, again, probably going to be one of the more controversial in the comments section, but hear me out, okay? Odell Beckham Jr., he goes down with an ACL tear during the Super Bowl. And at this point of the season, at this point of the year, you could say in terms of ACLs and the way that they've been miraculously recovering from the past couple of years, Odell could be close to ready to return. So the injury on the surface to me feels like, okay, if he's ready now, he's kind of on my radar, but this could be more of a week 6 or 7 kind of move for the Chargers too. So also keep that in mind, keep that on the table. The Chargers through the first 2 weeks of the season, I would say have been looking decent on offense. Not spectacular, but decent. Now, in order to match the firepower of their defense, they're going to have to make some moves. Me personally, I'm looking to that offensive line, trying to help out that run game a little bit. I don't have too much worry about the receivers. But every once in a while, there's a name that you can go and grab off of the waiver wire from free agency, maybe has some red flags around him, but can bring a certain amount of elevation to an offense, even if you're not hurting a specific position. And a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. can do that. Of course, we talked about Will Fuller and about his injury concern and stuff. You say, well, director, you don't want, Will Fuller. Why in the world would you want a guy like Odell Beckham Jr.? It's because Will Fuller is just not the same talent as an OBJ. OBJ's a difference maker. OBJ's a big playmaker. OBJ carries a lot of potential in terms of turning games on their heads and making big plays with a quarterback like Justin Herbert. And I do think the talent of a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. is worth pursuing. The Chargers, their current head coach in Brandon Staley, he comes from a system that very much so had the mentality last year of, guys, this team is looking really good. The record at that point of the year was looking very solid. Let's take it over the top. Let's go all the way. Let's go win a Super Bowl. And they signed Odell Beckham Jr. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for the Chargers to have that same mindset maybe a little bit later down the road when it comes to Odell Beckham Jr. and the talent that we've got on this offense. Maybe a bit too much, many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to, Odell Beckham Jr. and Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer. But at the same time, you can't just be good to win the Super Bowl. You got to be stupid good. At this point, I view the Chargers defense as stupid good. A move like, adding an Odell Beckham Jr. could elevate the offense to that stupid good status as well. And it's one that I have to keep on the table. It's one that I think the Chargers are considering if, the injury concern isn't there for Odell Beckham Jr. And it's one that I'm going to label as a hot take. Again, maybe a controversial one for this video, but it's one that I think is bold, it's brave, and it's the kind of move that Super Bowl winners make. As a matter of fact, it is a move a Super Bowl winner made last season in Los Angeles. So I'm going to go ahead and label OBJ as a hot take here, and I do think it's one that the Chargers are considering, especially because their neighbors made this move last season, and one that would definitely elevate this offense in a lot of different ways with his sort of playmaking ability. Guys, just imagine that trio: Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Odell Beckham Jr. And again, it's not one that's going to break the bank. You can get Odell in there for a pretty decent price, but at the same time, it would probably be a 1-year contract, and I think that's all the Chargers would need. Don't even really have to worry about the cap next season with a move like this. You guys let me know in the comment section below what you think. Well, guys, in the comment section below as well, let me know what your thoughts are on these hot and cold takes. Let me know if there's any that we didn't list on this video that you would be considering and maybe the Chargers would consider as well. As well as check out Underdog Fantasy, our brand new sponsor of the show. Every single week, I'm going to give you guys some names that I'm looking at. Of course, the Thursday slate of games is coming up here very soon. The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cleveland Browns. I got a couple of guys. You guys check out right here. I'm going to be posting some of my hot picks as of right now. Of course, you're going to want to wait until we're a little bit closer to game day just in case something does come up in terms of the news. But these are the kind of guys that I'm looking at right now. I'm a big fan of the pick'ems. They've also got these awesome, mid-season fantasy drafts that you can do. I think it's something like 5 other teams that you're with, and you only draft a certain number of players. It's a lot of fun. We'll get into more detail about that during the live stream on Sunday. Please definitely check out Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. It'll be a really good time. And again, I'll be posting a lot of my picks and stuff on Twitter as well. If you guys want to play along with me, this is one of the best ways to experience football season while we've got it, man. 4 or 6 short months of football season. Also, remember, you can use it for college and stuff like that. I don't use it for that as much, but at the same time, might start dipping my toe in the water a little bit as we get to know Underdog just a little bit better. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you did enjoy this content, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Go get Odell Beckham Jr., man. These are the moves of champions.